we kind of got into something there with her about kind of the guys in some of these rooms, right? Whether it be Ethan Piper, who was in the room last year, whether it's Thomas Fedoni, Harburg. And I got to tell you 100% from somebody who has done this at a much different level, finding the right guys culture fit way harder than finding talented guys.
100%.
And finding guys that can do both, almost impossible.
So I looked at the teams,
Yeah.
right? Some of the captains for the spring league.
Mhm.
And you got guys like Elliott Brown, Isaiah Garcia Castaneda,
Mhm.
um, Ballard, and you're thinking, well, guys that kind of involved, not really involved. And Ballard's a 1 year guy, right?
Mhm.
But what do all those guys have in common? They love what they're doing, and program first guys,
Mhm.
and they're accountable. So you empower them in these positions, and it doesn't seem like much, but it's very represent. It's a great representation of what we're talking about. Getting the right guys in the right seats is all what it's about. And they're very good at that,
Yeah.
right?
That to me is like maybe his one of his superpowers is finding those guys because it totally changes the dynamic of your team,
Right?
especially when they're good, right? You can have like it's one thing to have your walk-ons and your Nebraska high school guys that probably weren't getting offers anywhere else that are there and they love the state and they love the program. That's one thing, and that's super valuable. But it's another thing when you've got a guy in Thomas Fedoni who was super highly touted recruit, who is, as Coach Rule said, every school in the country still wants him.
I told you what I told you why they're drawn to one another, right?
Yeah, because they're both a little
They're
edgy.
they're the same person.
Yeah, but when you
Coach Rule is just significantly more experienced and older.
yeah, he's kind of navigated it a little.
Thomas says all the things that Coach Rule thinks.
So when you've got a guy like that who is both hyper talented and he's the culture guy you want, that is a whole other thing, right? It's the hey, when your best player is your hardest worker. Not saying that Fedoni is their best player, but when the best player is the hardest worker, then everybody else kind of has to fall in line.
Look at that relationship. I think another good one is Jamari Butler and Coach Rule.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, Exceptionally close, and it's for a lot of the same reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, I said it in passing. Actually, Sharp kind of saw it. Sharpie kind of saw it during the broadcast early, where you could just see Jamari Butler almost pleading
Mm-hmm.
to play, right?
Yeah.
Grabbing pads, taking them back, grabbing pads, taking them back, and there's a reason. I watched their interaction,
Mm-hmm.
Coach Rule and Coach Butler, and I Coach Butler, Jamari, and I just think that there's something when you can coach you can coach your high energy guys hard,
Mm-hmm.
like they can get after Tommy Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that all the time in high school because we have it backwards, right? We let guys that are good, we
Let
cut
him
them
off the
breaks
hook.
because there's not enough of them,
They're talented, right? You
you
don't want to
know.
scare them off.
And I just it's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's the total opposite. When you can
And listen, there's gonna be some kids that aren't about that.
yeah, like when you can jump a guy like Calvin Strong
Mm-hmm.
or Anthony Rizak or you know whomever Caleb
CJ,
CJ, yeah, good one, especially this year.
mm-hmm.
Like
What can't you say to Christian Jones?
he
Yeah.
knows. Campbell is another one. Like they know. Like you're the barometer. And listen, if we're gonna go double up on a drill and you're running a drill or we trust you to instruct a drill, you're gonna be held to a certain standard. So with that, you got to be able to handle those kinds of things. I watched Gifford's
I was
evolution.
just gonna say the guy that remind me as you're saying that the name that popped into my head was Gifford.
Yeah. S- and his story, it's an easy one to tell now.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's not we're gonna grab him because I just have we're
Mm-hmm.
kind of we get along okay. It's cool now to talk about because he's on the other end of it. But ask him about and talk to him about the early stages when the staff first got here. It's like, hey, I'm not the 4 or 5 guy. I'm not, well, although he is a great tester, so I shouldn't.
Yeah.
He may not be a great example,
but wasn't a super highly touted recruit.
Right.
Wasn't that guy.
It was a holdover, a little older. Sometimes those guys are hard to get.
When he started, wasn't he the gray shirt?
Yeah.
Coming in,
Yeah.
so like not even a full scholarship guy coming in.
And he's just kind of pissy by nature.
Yeah.
And
got the chip on his shoulder.
Oh, yeah, like
maybe a whole block.
This dude's like a rattlesnake, right? And just to watch their affinity grow for him, just stayed the course. Tried all these other guys to play. Yeah, you know what? Maybe Gift's the guy. Now, what are the pressers like this year? Oh man, one of the top players they're saying in the country, right? Now, we'll see, right? It's a lot of pressure, but what I do see is him embrace that role. He doesn't shout. They call on this guy.
Oh, so that's not going to phase him. That's not going to phase Gift.
Coach Coop gave my heart swells a little bit telling these stories. And I think I can say this because this isn't anything. I'm not talking scheme. But Giff was talking about, he said, hey, I want to ask you something. I'm going to say this out loud. I know this is a little personal. What'd you tell me this morning? And, Giff kind of sat there. He's like, no, just say it. I mean, it's personal, but we're all family, right? Like Giff said, I only want to play with tough guys. Like I only want to play with tough guys. Right. No harm, no foul, nothing big there. And Coach Coop said, why does Ike get to say that? And to see young guys raise their hand and say, because he's a tough guy,
yeah,
was like, I was like raised up out of my seat. How cool is that, though?
That they recognize it?
Because that's where the power is. So because in a day and age where peer-to-peer correction is so looked at sideways, don't say that to me, to have that embraced because a guy models it is the exact same reason why Coach Rule can say what he says to those guys, because they know he cares. He walks the walk. I thought that might have been the coolest thing that I'd seen all summer or spring.
We will come back and wrap up hour number 2 here next on Hurrdat Sports Radio.